Hello, here is Mihail Šiškin with me. Mä olen Iida-Simes Voima-lehdestä and I will explain about your book first in Finnish. We will be speaking English anyway. Eli puhutaan englantia, mutta esittelen vain kirjan, eli Mihail Šiškiniltä on ilmestynyt VSOY:n kustantamana Viha ja kauneus. Kirjoituksia sodasta, taiteesta ja Venäjän ideasta. Ja tämän kirjan ovat suomentaneet Vappu Orlov ja Sirpa Hietanen, koska he ovat suomentaneet näitä esseitä, joista tämä kirja koostuu. Okay, now let's begin with briefly about your latest things. So you are not in Russia anymore. You have decided to move to Europe some years ago.
How can one stay in Russia and speak in a loud voice what he thinks? So culture figures who stayed in Russia, they have to keep silent or to sing patriotic songs or to emigrate. You see, my whole life I had a firm ground under my feet. It was Russian culture, Russian literature. After this war started, it was empty under the feet. Yeah, it hurts. It hurts to see that people who read the same authors which I read, who had Russian literature at school, they support this war. That they became war criminals. How it happened. So, and now under my feet I felt just emptiness, yeah. And it's impossible to live with emptiness under the feet. So my fighting against this situation, against this totalitarian fascist regime are just words, just literature. So I tried to find the firm ground under my feet again. So this book is just my attempt to look at Russian literature, at Russian culture through the prism of this war, to understand what is happening. Why do we have in the 21st century in Europe the war again? What's the purpose of all the wars? Why do wars start? And for me it's absolutely simple answer. Yeah, democratic countries, they don't need wars to solve their problems. If Finland and Sweden get some problems, they will never start war against each other. They will have negotiations. The same is with Switzerland, where I live now, or with the whole world, or with Germany, England, France. Yeah, but the war is the food of every dictatorship. A dictator needs the war against the whole world, yeah, because he can explain to his or her population, look, we are surrounded by enemies. They want to destroy us. We have to defend our country. We love our country. Yeah, we are all patriots. Yeah, and they always misuse this wonderful feeling of patriotism. And so it means now we are in this global war of dictatorships against democratic countries. It's the same war which is held by Northern Korea or Iran or Russia against free world, against world culture. And we must show solidarity in this fighting the dictatorships, to defend our values, to defend our world culture.
Also, in your book, you are saying a couple of times that you believe in, or you have believed in, this is what I will ask you now, but anyway, you have believed in education earlier on, before you began writing totally professionally, I think, or when you graduated, you worked as a teacher. You believed that educating children is the most important thing, that's where the democracy will start. You are saying something like that in your book. And also later in your book you are saying that the sort of remedy against totalitarianism or fascism is education or enlightenment. Would you please explain this?
Look, what is the difference between us people living in the 21st century and the most part of population in Russia? It's time, yeah, because the humankind nowadays has made this mental, psychological revolution. Yeah? In the middle of the world, we have our consciousness, personal consciousness, and the population, most part of population in Russia, they have just patriarchal, tribal consciousness. You see, it's my decision what is good, what is evil. And if I see that my people, my country makes some evil, I will be against my people, against my country. And the people in Russia, they identify themselves with their tribe. Our tribe is always good. Other tribes are our enemies. They want to destroy us, annihilate us. We must defend our language, our Pushkin. Yeah. And of course, every dictatorship just needs this patriarchal consciousness. And the only possibility to overcome this patriarchal tribal consciousness to the individual consciousness is it goes through culture, through education. That is why in Russia, culture, education were always the main enemies of every dictatorship. From literature, they need just the educational feeling of patriotism, love your mother country, and under mother country they understand the regime itself. Look, in Russia there are, I don't know, 100,000 of schools. In every school you have the portrait of Tolstoy. But no teacher will put his words near the portrait of Tolstoy. Patriotism is slavery. No one. Because the main idea of education in totalitarian state is to educate slaves who are obedient to the power. And that is why the literature they teach in Russian schools is not real Russian literature. It's just the misusing of Russian literature. And the main enemies of Russian regime were always poets, culture figures, writers. That is why all of them actually were imprisoned or executed or had to emigrate or had to keep silence. And of course, dictatorships just greet is cheering writers who are supporting the regime. But these writers who just support the regime, support this war, what do they have in common with world culture? The idea of world culture is to educate human dignity. That is the only way to educate human dignity, to make this way from the tribal consciousness to the individual consciousness.
In this book you are writing about you going to a book fair in Krasnoyarsk, that's in Siberia, by the way, for the Finnish listeners or watchers. So anyway, that was in 2014, I think, and that's when the war started in Ukraine. Russia attacked Ukraine in 2014, and that was also the year of annexation of Crimea, which took place very, very short after the conflict or war really started. And you are saying this word silence. Also, some people talk about darkness, like Washington Post has this slogan on the first page that democracy dies in darkness. And in your book you are saying that in Krasnoyarsk there was total silence, that you tried to talk about the war, no one else at the book fair, which was a really big event, full of people, lots of publishers, everything, people talking on the podiums, and much noise, but still there was silence. Please
It
tell
was my
about
last visit to Russia.
Mhm.
I was so embarrassed by this silence. Huge book fair, a lot of readers, a lot of writers. Everybody is talking about literature, big words. I was the only one who was talking about the war, about this catastrophe. It was so humiliating. I didn't want to go to this humiliation again. So it was my last visit to Russia. But this silence, it continues till now. There are in Russia a lot of book fairs, a lot of book presentations, book literature discussions. No word about the war. And this is huge humiliation. And now the only way to support, to preserve the dignity of Russian literature is now here in exile. Now we have the responsibility for preserving the dignity of Russian literature, of Russian language. Why do we need this? Look, every war has its end. Every war is over one day. And this horrible war between Ukraine and Russia will over too one day. And there is such a huge chasm between Russians and Ukrainians, filled with death, blood, hate, pain. And with every day, every bomb, every rocket falling on Kharkov or Odessa, killing people, killing children, the chasm is growing and growing. But one day we will have to build a bridge over this chasm when the war is over. Who will start to build this bridge? Not politicians. There will be culture figures, writers, poets, musicians, artists. And for this bridge, we need to preserve the dignity of Russian culture, so there will be possibility to build this bridge.
About the end of war, I'm also quoting you. I will read this now in Finnish, but I will explain what I read, so don't worry. Thomas Mann pystyi uskomaan Saksan demokratian tulevaisuuteen, koska liittoutuneet varmistivat sen natsi-Saksan tuhouduttua. Miltä minun maani tulevaisuus näyttää? Kuka takaa Venäjän demokraattisen tulevaisuuden? Kuka selvittää Putinin valtakauden rikokset? Seuraava Putinko? Kuka käy Nürnbergin oikeudenkäynnit sotarikollisia vastaan? Sotarikolliset itsekö? Uskonko Venäjän demokraattiseen tulevaisuuteen? Thomas Mann päätti viimeisen radiopuheensa 10.5.1945 sanoihin: "Tämä on kaikesta huolimatta suuri hetki. Saksa palaa ihmisyyteen. Vieläkö koittaa se suuri hetki, jolloin Venäjä palaa ihmisyyteen?" So Thomas Mann was able to believe in the future of Germany after the Nazi regime because there were allied countries who were guaranteeing the future of Germany, you are writing here. And then you are asking that who will see that the criminals, war criminals, will be taken into court. Will it be the war criminals themselves, or who will guarantee that? Well, now at least Ukraine is sort of watching towards Europe. But anyway, doesn't Thomas Mann and his words also give hope to you in some sense? Thomas Mann was really worried about the literature. He also said that the literature written during the Nazi regime is totally worthless. But that time did end.
There were two ways to survive. This humiliation of German culture, of German language. First way, to give up. It was like Stefan Zweig in Brazil, who committed suicide with his wife. he couldn't accept this. And the second way was the way of Thomas Mann, fighting without hope, but still fighting. Because for him fighting was, first of all, to save the dignity of his language, to save the dignity of his culture. Yeah? And you remember after the war, after the Second World War, a lot of people, we can understand why, they didn't want the German language at all. But quite on the contrary, there must be a new German literature, anti-fascist, anti-Hitler literature. It was important for the survival.
And film art, like Fassbinder.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so the humankind had to support the new anti-fascist German literature. Now we have the same situation with the Russian language. Yeah? We have to support the new anti-Putin, free, anti-totalitarian literature in Russian language. And so for me it was very important to invent an instrument for the supporting the literary life in exile. And so I founded this literary prize. And this literary prize is not for Russian writers. It is not for Russian literature. It's very important. In which language does the most important Ukrainian writer Andrei Kurkov writes? In Russian. In which language writes the Nobel Prize winner from Belarus, Svetlana Alexievich? In Russian. So this prize is an attempt to support the literature in Russian language. Then Russian language doesn't belong to the dictatorship, doesn't belong to the territory of Russian Federation. It's the part of the world culture. And so it's very important for me to support the culture in Russian language now, which is also under attack worldwide. Yeah. In this situation. So that is why I founded this prize, and the title of this prize is Dar. In English it is the gift.
Oh.
It is the title of the last novel by Nabokov written in Russian.
How, to whom, how do you do it? I mean, what are the practices between the prize? How do you give it?
The main prize is the grant for translation into the English, German, and French. It's very important because, you see, if a well-known Russian writer writes a book, it will be translated in all languages, like Ulitsko, like me, yeah. But for the next generation, for people who don't have already names, yeah, it will be just impossible to be translated. Yeah, there are some new publishing houses which were founded now in exile. So this prize will, of course, support this independent publishing house. It will support the writers. But first of all, the idea is to open the door to the world literature, to the world culture. You see, and for these young writers, it is just the wall of translation. You see, in the last 20 years, there were a lot of translations from Russian into all languages because the grants came from Moscow. Now from Moscow, a writer who is against the war will never have a translation grant from Moscow. So our prize will do this.
That's a good thing, and there is a very strong educational part here too. Now we have only a couple of seconds, so I'm sorry, I will have to ask you to answer this shortly, even though this is a huge thing. Anyway, you are also saying here that one day a miracle happened. This is actually in the beginning part of the book, but one day a miracle happened. The sort of huge machinery based on totalitarianism and violence founded by Stalin. One day it just collapsed. It happened in 1990s. Anyway, is there a possibility for miracle?
Everybody wants to have hopes. I'm optimistic. Yeah, I think the whole development of the humankind is from cannibalism to the law state, and every nation will come to democracy because it's just the best way of living. Yeah, and some nations go direct way, some nations like Russians go very long way. But I'm sure one day they will come to democracy too. They have already had 2 attempts. In 1917, the democracy, the freedom in Russia lasted several months. In 90s, the democracy lasted some years. So our generation or the next generation or over the next generations will get this third possibility again, that maybe the democracy will last longer.
That was wonderful to know. Thank you so much. Spasiba. Kiitos paljon.
Thank you very much. Thank you.